despite commending the Supreme Court last year for what he called returning power back to the states where it belongs, took a different tack last night, effectively arguing against, well, federalism, claiming blue states should not have the authority to decide their own abortion laws. Here's what he said.
We cannot let states like California, New York, and Illinois have abortions on demand up until the day of birth. That is immoral. It is unethical. It is wrong. We can't leave it to Illinois. We can't leave it to Minnesota. We can't leave it to Illinois. We must solve that issue with a 15-week limit at a minimum.
So the case forever against Roe, Jen, has been return it to the states. Let the states decide. But Senator Scott took it a step further last night and said, no, actually, the federal government should decide for every state what happens on the issue of abortion.
Right. And let's just start with the states should decide, because that is an answer that a number of Republican candidates are giving because they know that abortion is a problematic topic with the public for them. That is a cop-out. When you say a state should decide, you're leaving half of the country and the women who live in those states without any protections. It is a cop-out. What Tim Scott said is crazy, let's just say. I mean, he has a very compelling personal story. I didn't think he was particularly memorable in the debate, but he's suggesting that if you're in a blue state and you're deciding, as Nikki Haley said, what your laws should be, that shouldn't count because you're a blue state and you're not allowed to make decisions about your own policies. That's not how it works with federalism. Doesn't even make sense. But what he's trying to do there on the politics is to appeal to evangelicals in Iowa because he's had a little bit of movement. He wants to be the pro-life candidate who's got a little more zest in him than Mike Pence. So it's pretty transparent what he's trying to do there politically.
And Simone, obviously the issue of abortion was devastating to Republicans in the midterm elections last year. They worry it will be devastating to them again next year. Didn't help themselves much last night.
No, not at all. And I do think that Nikki Haley is somebody that I think folks should watch out for, because if we really parse down what she said, she gave three different answers. At one point, she says that they really asked her about the decision that the Supreme Court justices in South Carolina made yesterday, where they overrode their previous decision on abortion. And she basically said that justices shouldn't be making those decisions for people. Then again went to this point about consensus. Then separately said that there doesn't need to be a national, federal ban on abortion. So I think that it is really important here that candidates find what their lane is on this and get an answer. Now, Tim Scott got an answer. It is confusing because this is what he said a couple weeks ago, but I guess this is where he has shook out. This is what I will say about abortion and voters when we look towards the general election. The Democrats have very effectively framed this whole debate now about freedom. We are no longer talking about, are we talking about a couple weeks here, 20, 25? This is about freedom. The Democrats have put this in a frame of being able to go out and women making the decisions with their families and with their doctors. And on the other side, you have Republican elected officials who aren't even willing to say if they think a 7th grader should have to have a baby by her rapist. That is where this debate is. That is how voters are viewing it. And if folks do not understand that, they're not gonna see any return from these folks.
I mean, the problem for Republicans, actually, Simone, is that some Republicans have said a 7th grader should be forced to have an abortion by her rapist. I mean, just look to Michigan. Look to all of the extreme things that Republicans have said since Dobbs was overturned. And Lonnie, you know, it is remarkable how much they have misplayed this, how extreme they have been in Wisconsin, embracing an 1848 a total abortion ban and losing a Supreme Court race, a critical race because of that. What a candidate in Michigan said in a race that Republicans thought they could win, saying a 14-year-old girl raped. That's a perfect reason why we shouldn't allow her to terminate her pregnancy. But talk about how Republicans' overreaching and radicalism on this issue has changed abortion. And Simone brings up such a great point. It used to be about life, right? And there was always a great balance between life, unborn life, and the liberty of women. Now, because of the radicalism, it's about liberty. It's about freedom. That's what's taken center stage in this debate. And Republicans have just been routed nonstop since Dobbs. I'm curious, going into 24, what is the best play for a Republican who needs to understand that even people who call themselves pro-life their entire life have now changed after Dobbs?
Well, I mean, that's why I think Nikki Haley actually, and we've talked about this a little bit, I thought she gave the best answer from a general election perspective on this issue. And because, I think what she's trying to do is to reframe the debate. She's trying to say, look, what are areas on which we might actually agree, which led, of course, to the retort from former Vice President Pence on compromise not equaling leadership. But I think that Nikki Haley did set out, I think, a marker in a lot of ways, which is to say what would be a position that in a general election would not be completely offensive to independents, particularly in places like Pennsylvania and Wisconsin, where Republicans know they have to be competitive in order to win. Look, the challenge with these primary debates, and you saw it vividly last night, is that you've got 8 people who agree on 95% of stuff, right? All of those 8 are nominally at least some point pro-life. But what you don't see, of course, is then how do you take that and how do you draw distinctions? And primaries are about drawing distinctions on really narrow turf, particularly debates like last night. And so when you come to an issue like abortion, or, Nikki Haley talked about spending, about fiscal policy. She tried to attack what the Trump administration did. So I think that the idea here is the challenge with debates like this is that they do tend to drive extremes, because then what you've got to do is say, how do I stand out on this? And so you end up taking positions that I think for a general election campaign are going to prove to be highly problematic.
Well, I've got to say, and what Nikki Haley did actually would help her in a general election. She told the truth about how reckless Donald Trump was with spending. She told the truth about the abortion issue and this pie-in-the-sky view of Republicans that they're going to get 60 votes for an extreme abortion ban. It's just not going to happen.